Welcome to the 5 for 2 podcast with me, your host Adele, where we say no to careers where you're trading 5 days of misery for 2 days of fun. A place we discuss all things career, confidence, and money moves. I want to motivate, teach, and empower ambitious women to achieve more, earn more, feel more confident, and enjoy the work they do. It's all about believing you can have everything you want in your career and then going and getting it. So if you're ready, let's get into it. So today is part 1 of the interview series, and we're starting it off with career change interviews. So when you're changing roles or changing industry, doing something you've not yet done before, how do you need to show up at that interview? You guys already know career changes are one of my specialities. Not only have I done it for myself, but I've done it for a number of clients, especially in my program, Create Your Own Lane. When people get into that program, what they thought they wanted often changes. And like I said, the name says it all, Create Your Own Lane. But when people are in my one-to-one coaching, it tends to be what we're working on. We're usually working on some sort of career change. It's usually an industry change, but sometimes it's a role change. People want to move into senior leadership or whatever it is, and they're not sure how to show up at interview. So first things first, if this is you and you currently have interviews lined up and you're trying to change career, if you've booked the interview, you are more than good enough to be in the room and to get the job. A lot of the times when people are changing career, they turn up at the interview already saying, I don't have enough experience. They knew your experience when they saw your CV and they booked you in, meaning what they saw on paper intrigued them and they are interested in having you work for them. If they weren't, they wouldn't have booked you in. No recruiter or hiring manager is wasting their time. Interviews take a chunk of the day. Listen, take it from someone, an experienced recruiter, done it for years. I am not taking time out of my day to interview a candidate that I don't think is that good. I'm just not. I am not wasting my time, especially when I've got other things to do. I've got targets, I've got things that need to happen. I can't afford to just interview every and anybody. That's why we have a shortlisting process. Have you ever seen some jobs have like 150 applications? They are not interviewing 150 candidates. They are probably interviewing 10 people out of that 150, if that. So if you have been shortlisted, whether you have the experience or not, they saw something on that bit of paper that made them want to see you. So show up in that energy, show up with a little bit of confidence. They saw something they wanted to see. You have something on paper that they want. Now all you've got to do is go in and communicate what it is they saw on paper and show them that you are deserving of the job. That job is yours. You're already halfway there once you book the interview. That's the crazy thing. I always say to people, you're already halfway there. As long as you have not lied in your CV, you are halfway there. If you've networked and from networking, they've booked you in, you are already halfway there. They like you. There's something about you. You've got something about you. Remember that. If you are booking interviews, you've got something about you. People are interested to get to know more. Your only job is to now show them more and to communicate why they made the right decision booking you in for an interview. Another thing to consider as well, when you think about the fact that you've booked the interview and you're already there, I want you to consider that if you got shortlisted, like I really want you to consider this, if you got shortlisted, why can't the other candidate have the same experience as you? So often we tell ourselves that, oh my gosh, I'm probably the least experienced, I don't have much experience. What if they've looked at your CV and shortlisted you, what if they've looked at other candidates with similar experience and actually you're on an even playing field? Let me take it a bit further. What if you're the most experienced out of the 10 people that they've shortlisted? You can't see the other candidates' CVs, so it's just a thought. And what if you can just change the thought? It is nothing more than a thought. You think you don't have enough experience, but they shortlisted you. So clearly you have enough experience. You think there's going to be other people there with more experience and probably more articulate and are better than you. What if there's not? What if it's just a thought? What if someone's looked at your CV and said, I want to shortlist you, all the other people they've shortlisted are just the same, on the same level? What if it's just a thought and you just need to change the thought? What if there's 10 people just like you going for an interview with the same level of experience, but because you're already dismissing yourself, you're showing up from that place of like fear. Oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to do good in this interview. And then guess what happens? You don't do good in the interview. So that's just an additional thought. What if you are the most experienced person they've shortlisted, or at the very least, they've not just shortlisted you. You're not the only person that doesn't have the experience. They are interviewing other people that day who also do not have all the experience in the world, but there's something on paper that is intriguing. The first thing you want to do when you're in that interview is I want you to know the connection between the skills you already have, the qualities that you bring to the table. I spoke about career identity in a previous episode. Go and listen to it if you haven't. I want you to share how those connect to the job. How does who you are in your career, the qualities you bring to the table, the skills you have on offer, the natural strengths that you have, how do they connect to the position that you've applied to? It doesn't matter what industry it's in. You have transferable skills. You have skills like communication, adaptability, critical thinking, all these things. Can you show how they connect to the new job? If you've listened to some of my other episodes, you know what I always say. Grab the job description, have a look. How does what you can already do connect to the new job? How is who you are, your career identity, how is that going to deliver on that job? How is that going to help you be good in this new industry? When you've read that job description or that job advert, what made you think you could do that job? Something in you makes you think you can move into this new role or this new industry. That's the real you coming up. Let her out, let her speak, let her show off, let her brag a little bit. Connection. Can you articulate the connection between what you've already done and what they need from this job? And then can you talk about results that you've had in your previous jobs and experiences that are relevant to this job? What outcomes have you delivered for your other companies that you can deliver for them? Let me give you an example. When I was in childcare and I was managing, I would do show rounds to show parents around the building to see if they wanted to take a space at our nursery instead of going to another nursery. At the time, I didn't realize it, but that's sales basically. And whenever I did a show round, so there was me, at one point I was the assistant manager, and then I had a manager above me. Whenever the manager did show rounds, she would convert about 70%. So about 7 out of 10 people would take up a space. If I did a show round, 100% of people would take up a space. Everyone used to say it. My manager started just saying to me, you do it. Because if I did a show round, they was going to take the space. Whatever it is I was saying, whatever it was I was doing, I was helping them to see that our nursery was the nursery for their child. We are a great nursery and they wanted to be where we were. And I would always get people to sign up. Like, it was that simple. I didn't know that it was sales at the time, but it was. So when I went into recruitment, I was like, I am very convincing. People buy into me. When I talk about a company, I'm able to convert people into customers. So I can do that for you. If I come and work for you in a recruitment office, I can convert people into customers. I can make people want to work with you as a company, but I can also make people want to work for your company because I'm just good at selling. And I never used to call it selling at the time. I just used to be like, people like me. I'm just good at that. I've told you guys before, sell what you know. You don't have to have all this fancy wording. Talk about what you know. Talk about what makes you feel comfortable. Because when you talk in a more comfortable way, you feel more confident. When you try and use words that are not natural to you or like big fancy words that just are not you, it's awkward. And the other person feels the awkwardness. Even if they don't know what it is, they feel like it doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel real. So talk about what you know, make the connection. Talk about the results you've delivered previously, and that's your job. Before you go for interview, think about all the things that you've achieved in your career. How does that connect to the new job? How could that possibly help them? If you do the work beforehand, it's going to help you when you're in the interview. And I'm actually going to talk about that a little bit more on probably part 3 of this interview series, how you can prepare for your interview so that you can make the connections. The next thing you're going to want to do at any interview for a career change is address head on why what you have not done before will not be a problem. The gaps in your experience, the things that you've never done, it's a whole new industry. You have no idea. You've never worked in the industry. I need you up front to be ready for the question of like, well, because you haven't got experience in this, do you think it's going to be a problem? I want you to already know that it's not going to be a problem and already be ready to answer this. The reason it's not going to be a problem is because you should be ready with this answer. Whether it's that you're a fast learner, and I don't want you to just say I'm a fast learner. You need to evidence it. What evidence in your past can show you and prove that you can learn quickly? Why is being a beginner not an issue? Listen, your current job, wherever you are, you was a beginner at one point. You wasn't good at it. You didn't turn up at your job currently and just good on day one. When you got your first ever job when you were 16 or 18 or 21, however old you were, you weren't great at the job. You had to become great at it. You learned on the job. You picked it up, someone taught you, you figured it out. So have that same energy. You don't need to have done something to become good at it. You can't be an expert before you're a beginner. So being a beginner isn't a problem. Don't make it a problem. Think about similarities. What have you done previously that is similar to the job? It doesn't have to be the same, but it can be similar to the job, which you'll be like, oh, that is really similar to when I did this. That's why I don't think it's going to be a problem for me to learn it, or I don't think it's going to be a problem for me to do it, because it's really similar to this. And I used to do this in this job, and this is how I did it. So I don't think that in your job, it's going to be a problem. Talk about it. When I left childcare, went into HR, I used to write reports for children. We used to write children's reports. I used to do it on the computer. I used to have to submit funding to Ofsted so I could get funding for the kids. So when they were talking about, well, you're going to have to do a lot of paperwork. You work with kids, so you probably don't do a lot of paperwork. Don't I? Let me tell you all the paperwork that I do. So I told them all the paperwork that I do. They were like, oh, you've never worked in an office, so it might be really hard. No, it's not going to be a problem because I do all this paperwork all the time. Sometimes I have to stay late to do the paperwork because there's not enough time during the day. But I do hours and hours of paperwork. I write reports every single day. I write a daily sheet to give to a parent to tell them how their child's been. I write incident reports. I submit funding to Ofsted. I'm always writing, doing data entry. I'm always doing those things. It's my job to find the evidence, connect it to the new industry, and then tell them why it's just not going to be a problem. And the last thing you want to do to show why it's not going to be a problem is your research. I had a lady once who does accounts. She does finance, and she'd never really done the VAT part. I'm not sure why, because, you know, VAT in general is a part of payroll and stuff. But anyway, she hadn't done the VAT part. And she said, oh yeah, some of the jobs are like, they need you to be really experienced with VAT. And I was like, oh, is VAT really hard? She goes, no. And she literally sat there and explained to me what VAT is. She explained to me the calculation. I was like, have you ever said that in an interview? She was like, oh no. And I was like, well, then that's the problem. Why have you not said that? You researched it. You know that VAT is not that hard because all you've got to do is this, this, this. Say that at your interview. Show your research. Even if you've not done it, if you know what the calculations are, if you know how to do the thing. Like, just because I hadn't done recruitment before, I'd done my research. I was like, well, I know I'm going to have to talk to people. I know there's going to be targets. Like, I talked about what I knew, and I talked about it in a way where it was like, oh yeah, I already know. I'm expecting it. It's not going to be a problem. If you don't make it a problem, they won't make it a problem. It really is that simple. Sometimes as humans, we overcomplicate everything. Our brain makes everything so complicated. And FYI, the girl who spoke to me about the VAT, she then went on to go and interview after we'd had our conversation, and she got 2 offers. 2 offers in less than 72 hours. And then on top of that, when she took the job she did take, she ended up getting a pay rise 4 months into the job. And this was something she'd not done before. And she'd been on interviews previously. She'd been on like 5 or 6 interviews previously and hadn't got the job. And they kept saying to her, oh, your lack of experience in this specific area is the problem. Listen, you can't get experience in the area until someone gives you the job. But you have to convince them that you not having the experience isn't an issue. And all she had to do was literally explain to them, even though I've never done VAT before, I know that all it is you've got to calculate whatever it is, 20% by this, and then add this onto that. And because I know how to do the first part, it's not going to be a problem. That will take me like 5 minutes to learn. Hello, answered. Question answered. Problem resolved. They don't have an issue. You don't have an issue. They will move on to the next question. People are not stepping into new industries, stepping into senior management and leadership because they suddenly know how to do the thing. You can't know how to do something till you get in the role and do it. Your only job at interview when it comes to a career change is showing them how what you already have is going to make what they want you to do easy. What you already have, alleviate all the problems they already have in their head. They saw you on paper. Likelihood is, if they've shortlisted you and you've not got as much experience or any experience, is because they've hired someone else who didn't have experience and that person worked out. And that's why you got shortlisted. So they're not worried about you not having experience. But then when you show up and you can't communicate why not having experience isn't an issue. If you keep saying, for instance, oh, I just need training, that's a problem. They want to know that you've researched, you've done your part. What are you bringing to the table? You're telling them, I need you to train me. Cool, that's all well and good. But if we're going to train you, what are you already bringing to the table? And that's where your career identity comes in. That's where you knowing how to connect what you already have with what they're looking for. Make what you have look like what they want. I've already given you some examples, but make the connection. If you can show similarities, if you can show that you've researched something and that any gaps you have are not a problem, if you can share the results you've achieved in your previous industry and why they are relevant to this new job and why they'll be helpful, you're going to get job offers. Changing industry, I'm not saying there's not going to be obstacles. I'm not saying parts of it won't be hard, but it is definitely not as hard as people make it out to be. It definitely doesn't require another qualification. It definitely doesn't require years of experience or years of volunteering. It requires your ability to get behind yourself, to back yourself. It requires you to communicate in a way that shows the person you're talking to the connections. It requires you to do your research so that they can see that you're really into the job and that you're going to do everything you need to do once you get there. Also, you can use some of the language that they're used to hearing, which gives them like a comfortability, you know, when you can make that connection, like you're talking in their terms. So if you have any kind of interview coming up for a new role or a new industry, re-listen to this if you need to. But those are the steps. They're literally the steps I walk my clients through. They're the steps that have had some of my clients in 8 weeks, in 10 weeks, leave one job and go into a whole new industry and get paid more money sometimes. Not because of a qualification, not because of experience. My one-to-one coaching does exactly what it says on the tin. It teaches people to create their own lane. And that means whether you have the qualification or you don't, whether you've got the experience or you don't, you can still step into the role that you want if you understand how to make the connections. I hope this episode's been helpful. Part 2 next week. Make sure you tune in. And then part 3. Part 3 is going to be all about interview confidence and it's going to link nicely to this episode. Part 2 is going to be about rejections and negotiating more than money. Because it's not all the time, not every day we're talking about negotiating money. I know you guys think I love talking about money, and I do, because we all need more. But this time I'm going to be talking about all the other things that you should be negotiating, not just money. Anyway, tune into the next episode. And don't forget, if you're currently struggling with any area of your career change or trying to get the money that you want and that you deserve, reach out, book a free call with me, and let's see if me and you working together on this thing we call career journey is a good fit. All right, guys. Speak to you next week. I hope this episode gave you exactly what you needed and motivated you to confidently take steps towards your next career move. If you enjoyed it, screenshot and share it on your socials, tag me on Instagram, and come join my community of amazing women working on leveling up their confidence and career. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.